And joining me now is our panel. Audrey Fahlberg, reporter for the National Review, Chuck Rocha, host of the Substack show, The Rocha Revolution, and co-host of the Latino Vote podcast, and Marc Short, former chief of staff to Vice President Mike Pence. And of course, he's also a contributor on Meet the Press. So Audrey, let me start with you. We heard a little bit from Republicans. What is your assessment of how they are looking at this number? Is it sticker shock or is it what they expected?
Well, thank you for having me on today.
Good to see you.
When we think about Congress, we think about it theoretically as an institution that likes to jealously guard its power. I think under the Trump administration, Republicans have been really amenable to all of Trump's requests, whether that's, tariffs, foreign entanglements overseas. I think broadly speaking, when we think about House and Senate leadership, they're going to be amenable probably to whatever number that Trump wants. Definitely watch moderate Republicans because they're not just going to want an invoice. They're going to want to, some of them are going to want to probably try to assert some congressional authority over the war in Iran.
Mark, we've heard from Republicans at times when Ukraine was in the subject line for funding for that, a lot of pushback. Do you think this will be viewed quite differently?
Oh, I do. I think there's much more unity to support American troops in conflict. And quite frankly, Kelly, I think you'll end up seeing Democrats support, too. I don't think Democrats want to be perceived as voting against troops.
Hard to do that.
And I think that because the margin of the House is so small, they're going to need it to be bipartisan. So I think you're going to see this bill, like it always does, become larger, include other priorities that Democrats have, and therefore get the funding across the line.
Well, let's turn to you then. Do you think Democrats will be in that kind of tough spot of wanting to look like they're supportive of men and women in uniform, want to replenish the supplies that are needed, et cetera? Or is this a time to show some opposition?
If everybody's taxes were low and everybody's belly was full and gas was $3 a gallon, I think they'd be amenable. I don't think right now that's the case. I think that this Congress always finds a way to fund wars, but we can't find a way to fund Medicaid, fund child care, fund things that will bring down utility costs. That's what I hear every day. I'm not just on TV pontificating. I run campaigns across the country, and every voter, Democrat, Republican, or Independent, are sick and tired of this anxiety around the cost of living, and they don't want to see their tax dollars spent wars overseas.
And are you hearing that notion that the president talks about, that it's a short-term thing that's worth it to try to eradicate a problem with Iran, that costs may be up as a result?
Look, if it was a short-term thing in America's mind, it would already be over. It's already went too long for folks because gas prices, everything that everybody has to deal with every day, that war is a vision a long way away, but what they deal with every day is on their mind.
Audrey, there was a really notable moment today when the president was with the Japanese prime minister, and they were talking about why Japan wasn't notified ahead of time for the U.S. action in Iran. And the president used a bit of history in an awkward moment. Let's play that and then talk about it.
One thing you don't want to signal too much, when we go in, we went in very hard and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay, why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor?
You could see the prime minister breathing in there. Obviously, for more than 80 years, the U.S. and Japan have been trying to heal that relationship and have had a strong bond. Was that an issue for President Trump? Were you surprised by it? How do you think people will hear that?
I wasn't particularly surprised by that. I think the president likes to keep foreign leaders on their toes. I'm a political reporter. I was in the White House when Trump made a similar crack to the German chancellor's face. This kind of thing is common with him. I think he likes to keep foreign leaders on their toes. I think broadly speaking, those two do have a solid relationship. She's kind of new to her post, and maybe he's trying to test her a little bit, but definitely kind of a wild thing to watch in real time.
It was something to watch. And Chuck, what do you think in terms of the president has said he wants help from Japan with the Strait of Hormuz? That has not been forthcoming. That is a moment where she appeared uncomfortable. Hard to know what was in her thoughts.
I think every time he has one of these things in the White House where he has a foreign leader there, and he spent so much of his presidency deal with international, and I understand as the president, you have to deal with international matters. But what I just said a while ago is there's so much wrong on domestic soil. And I think every time a voter sees, whether it's this person or this other folks, they see him dealing with international stuff when they're like, we should be focusing on what things are at home.
Well, let's go home in terms of, you had worked in the White House. You were part of the Trump administration in the 45 era. Want to point your attention to the reporting we've talked about today from some of my colleagues about Corey Lewandowski, who you obviously know, who's been working as a top aide to Secretary Noem at DHS. So the reporting suggests that there may have been requests for some kind of compensation in exchange for contracts related to especially the mass deportations. He denies those claims. Does that have legs in a Trump White House? Is that something that would get the president's attention?
Of course it would, Kelly. And I think also the fact that you're seeing Republicans initiate investigations, I don't think they'd be doing that unless the White House was comfortable with it. I think there's no doubt that President Trump could tell them to stop those investigations. The fact that he's not gives me every reason to believe that the White House is comfortable investigating this further.
And is there an atmosphere in sort of the Trump era where people are engaged in some level of business relationships? We see that with Jared Kushner, who is also one of these. He's not even a special government employee this time, but he is not being paid by taxpayers, but he's in roles officially. Is there an environment that's been fostered by the Trump administration?
I think in the second Trump administration, there's an extraordinary amount of grift that I think a lot of Americans are uncomfortable with. And so I think this is just a piece of it.
And I think also when you think about the way this presidency started with Doge and a way about us all talking about waste, fraud, and abuse, and we were going to save all of this money, I think that this flies in the face of that. I think the American voter is just wanting somebody to be responsible and spend their tax dollars on things that matter to them.
We're at a turning point, Audrey, with the Department of Homeland Security awaiting a new secretary. First step of the vote today for Marc Mullen. The committee passed him out through the Senate. Now for the next review. Do you see that as a turn the page moment based on your reporting there?
I absolutely do. I think people are really optimistic that Mullen will work better with DHS officials. You have to remember, looking back, I mean, the straw that really broke the camel's back was the president's frustration that during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, Noam had suggested that the president greenlit that $220 million ad campaign that's become so controversial. Beyond that, there's also been a lot of infighting between Noam and other DHS leaders like Border Czar Tom Homan and others. There's hope that under Mullen, that kind of infighting will stop.
And do you get a sense that that could in any way lead to a resolution of the budget impasse with DHS, or is that on its own track?
I think it's shocking in the midst of us having a conflict with Iran. Democrats are stopping funding of the Department of Homeland Security. You've already seen a couple domestic incidents. And the fact that they're not providing security for the United States citizens, I think, is absolutely shocking. I was surprised, though, in the hearing that I thought Republicans should have been focused on that message. Like, the fact that Republicans aren't hitting that message each and every day, I think it's an incredible liability for Democrats. And we should be on the offense there. But instead, we're talking about, personal attacks on Rand Paul as opposed to focusing on Democrats not funding Homeland Security.
There were a couple of senators, Moreno and Hawley, who took their time to make that case.
But it should be unified, Kelly.
Yeah,
it really should.
It did not break through with some of the contentious aspects of this. I want to say thank you to our panel. Appreciate all your insights and coming in today and giving us your real-world expertise. Thank you so much.